Hello world and welcome to the program. This is Alex and the new episode of Ukrainian Unleashed, a podcast where you'll get along with Ukrainians and also observe how the global scenery impacts Ukrainian society in these exciting times. We speak about events, trends, individuals and lifestyles of modern Ukrainians. So let's jump right in. Alexei Navalny is a Russian opposition leader, politician, lawyer, and anti-corruption activist. He came to international prominence by organizing demonstrations and running for office to advocate reforms against corruption in Russia, President Vladimir Putin and Putin's government. He is the leader of the Russia of the Future Party and the founder of the Anti-Corruption Foundation, an NGO working mainly in the field of investigative journalism. Navalny has been described as the man Vladimir Putin fears most by the Wall Street Journal. And funny, Putin avoids directly referring to Navalny by name. Check this out.
Этот господин оседлал очень модную тему борьбы с коррупцией.
По поводу персонажей, которых вы упомянули. Кто-то, какие-то политические силы.
Navalny has been arrested several times by Russian authorities. He received 2 suspended sentences for embezzlement in 2 cases, one in July 2013 and another one in December 2014. Both cases are widely considered to be politically motivated and intended to bar him from running in future elections. The European Court of Human Rights ruled that both cases violated Navalny's right to a fair trial, but they were never overturned. In total, Navalny won 6 complaints against the Russian authorities for a total of 225,000 euros. Okay, so what's happened between him and Putin recently, which escalated the public tension and provoked the biggest rallies all over Russia? Well, on 20th of August 2020, Navalny suddenly felt ill during a flight from Tomsk to Moscow and was hospitalized in Omsk, where the plane had made an emergency landing. The change in his condition on the plane was sudden and violent, and video footage showed crew members on the flight scurrying towards him and him screaming loudly, as he later said, not screaming from pain, but from the knowledge that he was dying. Afterwards, his spokeswoman said that he was in coma and on ventilator in the hospital. She also said that since he arose that morning, Navalny had consumed nothing but a cup of tea acquired at the airport. Thus, it was suspected that something was mixed into his drink. The hospital said that he was in a stable but serious condition, and after initially acknowledging that Navalny had probably been poisoned, the hospital's deputy chief physician told reporters that poisoning was one scenario among many. But Ivan Zhdanov, chief of Navalny's Anti-Corruption Foundation, said that Navalny could have been poisoned because one of the latest foundation's investigations. After a big round of discussions with Russian authorities, the plane was sent from Germany to evacuate Navalny from Russia for treatment at the Charité hospital in Berlin, even though the doctors treating him in Omsk initially declared he was too sick to be transported. On the 2nd of September, the German government announced that Navalny was poisoned with a Novichok nerve agent from the same family of nerve agents that was used to poison Sergei Skripal and his daughter in the UK. Officials said that they have obtained unequivocal proof from toxicology tests. It called on the Russian government for an explanation. Meanwhile, while carrying their own investigation, Navalny's team said that traces of the nerve agent used to poison Navalny was detected on an empty water bottle from his hotel room in Tomsk, suggesting that he was possibly poisoned before leaving the hotel. Later, on 23rd of September, Navalny was discharged from hospital after his condition had sufficiently improved. But here comes the bombshell. On 14th of December, a joint investigation by the Insider and Bellingcat in cooperation with CNN and Der Spiegel was published, which implicated agents from Russia's Federal Security Service in Navalny's poisoning. The investigation detailed a special unit of the FSB which specializes in chemical substances, and the investigators then tracked members of the unit using telecom and travel data they acquired from data analysts. According to the investigation, Navalny was under surveillance by a group of operatives from the unit for 3 years, and they may had earlier attempts to poison Navalny. In an interview with Spanish newspaper El País, Navalny said that it is difficult for me to understand exactly what is going on in Putin's mind. 20 years of power would spoil anyone and make them crazy. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. So on 17th of January 2021, Navalny returned to Russia by plane from Germany, arriving at Sheremetyevo International Airport in Moscow. At passport control, he was detained. The Federal Penitentiary Service confirmed his detention and said that he would remain in custody until the court hearing. They said that Navalny may face jail time for violating the terms of his probation by leaving Russia, saying it would be obliged to detain him once he returned. Prior to this, as I mentioned earlier, in 2014, Navalny received a suspended sentence in the Ibrosha case, which he called politically motivated, and in 2017, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that Navalny was unfairly convicted. Amnesty International declared Navalny to be a prisoner of conscience and called on the Russian authorities to release him. Well, the sweetest part of it began when 2 days after he was detained by Russian authorities and while still being in jail, an investigation by Navalny and his organization was published accusing President Vladimir Putin of using fraudulently obtained funds to build a massive estate for himself near the town of Gelendzhik in Krasnodar region in what he called the world's biggest bribe. According to the investigation, the estate is 39 times the size of Monaco, with the Federal Security Service owning 70 square kilometers of land around the palace, and the estate cost over $1.3 billion to construct. It also showed aerial footage of the estate via drone and the detailed floor plan of the palace that Navalny said was given by a contractor, which was compared to photographs from inside the palace that were leaked onto the internet in 2011. The investigation also detailed an elaborate corruption scheme allegedly involving Putin's inner circle that allowed Putin to hide billions of dollars to build the estate. Navalny's team also said that it managed to confirm reporting about Putin's alleged lovers, Svetlana Krivonogih and Alina Kabayeva. Navalny's video on YouTube boosted over 20 million views in less than 1 day and over 92 million after a week. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov in a press conference called the investigation a scam and said that citizens should think before transferring money to such crooks. However, we saw their impregnable fences, its own port, its own security, a church, its own permit system, a no-fly zone, and even its own border checkpoint. And it is absolutely a separate state within Russia. Well, in result, on January 23rd, Navalny's supporters marched in almost 200 cities across Russia, resulting in more than 4,000 arrests and 24 criminal cases against demonstrators. The street was blocked by riot police and the protesters began scattering onto nearby streets. Groups of officers surrounded them and grabbed them one at a time. Police officials in St. Petersburg were denying reports of the use of grenades and pepper gas against protesters, despite the numerous videos confirming that. In general, police were violently arresting and beating protesters that day. Officials also used the matter of coronavirus safety concern to place several of Navalny's top colleagues under house arrest, including the politician Lyubov Sobol and Navalny's own brother Oleg. Reuters estimated up to 40,000 protesters gathered in Moscow. Authorities gave a figure of only 4,000 participants, while other estimates included 15,000 and 25,000 participants. Well, on January 31st, the Navalny supporters continued staging protests across Russia for the second consecutive weekend. His team of activists said it anticipated demonstrations in at least 142 different cities, and dozens of rallies were taking place elsewhere around the world. Once again, the city of St. Petersburg emerged as a focal point of the demonstrations, in part because of the violent actions of local police. In addition to beating up protesters, police officers used tasers while detaining demonstrators and arrested more than 1,000 people in total. The facial recognition system in the Moscow metro was used to detain protesters that day, reported TASS. Apparently, the system's database contains the faces of people who have repeatedly taken part in unauthorized rallies. The state communications watchdog Roskomnadzor warned media outlets about heavy fines for spreading fakes concerning unauthorized rallies, including publishing inflated figures of the number of participants in illegal rallies. So, what is an unauthorized rally? As you are not allowed to speak up on the streets of Russia, you need to get a special permission allowing you to organize any forms of manifestations or protests. Otherwise, it's illegal. Yes, you heard it. So, think about it if you really consider autocracies an efficient way of governance. So what's the latest on Alexei Navalny? On 2nd of February, a Moscow court replaced Navalny's 3.5-year suspended sentence with a prison sentence, minus the amount of time he spent under house arrest, meaning he would spend 2.5 years in a penal colony. Following the verdict, Navalny's team called for immediate protests near the Kremlin and Manezhnaya Square in Moscow. Large numbers of riot police were deployed to the square and other areas in central Moscow. Police then cordoned Manezhnaya Square and Pushkinskaya Square. Red Square was also closed earlier. The Okhotny Rad, Teatralnaya and Ploshchad of Revolution metro stations were then also closed. Around 1,000 protesters gathered at Tverskaya Street and 2,000 were estimated to have marched down the Petrovsky Pereulok. The main group of protesters then headed to Pushkin Square. So police dispersed the protesters with force. According to the OVD info, 1,377 people in total were detained, including over 1,110 in Moscow and over 240 in St. Petersburg. So what's the aftermath? Well, according to polls conducted in September 2020 by the Levada Center, a Russian independent non-governmental polling organization, only 20% of Russians approve Navalny's activities, 50% disapprove, and 18% had never heard of him. But Vladimir Putin's rating already dropped to the level of 39% this year, and this is a big problem for Russian politics. It is noteworthy that the next most popular answers among Russians are "I would rather not vote," which is 24% of respondents, and "I don't know who to vote for," which is 16% of respondents. So this is more or less the characteristics of the situation in Russia. And here is why the situation got so tense. While imprisoning Navalny and losing Putin's credit of trust, neither authorities nor people know what to do next. And the air of deep political and economical crisis is floating around. I, as Ukrainian, mostly interested in Navalny's figure because of his courage and intrigue where all that may come. Also, in my opinion, we are foreseeing now a grand collapse of the last world's empire emerged on the ruins of USSR. So, want to know more about Navalny? Then leave your comments and I promise get back to the topic following the most relevant ones. This was a new episode of Ukrainian Unleashed podcast. Thanks for being here with me. I also would love to thank Purple Planet for lovely musical compositions used in this episode. We did our best to extend our presence all over the web, so you may find us everywhere wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, check our pages in social media with fresh updates. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram accounts are waiting for you. And here is another update. We started releasing classy video content, which you can find on our pages on social networks and on our YouTube channel. These are video versions of podcast episodes and more. So come on in and take a look. See you very soon, guys.